Hello, my dear friends. I'm so happy to see you all back on my channel today. As usual, I will continue to bring you a new part of the emotional story about the life of the single mother Lythica, a small woman, yet always strong and resilient, carrying countless burdens of life on her shoulders. Do you still remember? In the previous episode, we followed Officer Hùng, a man fully devoted to his duty, willing to sacrifice his own safety to protect the peace of the people. While on a mission at his workplace, Hùng unexpectedly fell into the ambush of a violent criminal gang. They attacked fiercely and viciously, leaving him no chance to fight back. On the deserted dirt road, he collapsed, blood staining the ground red. That moment tightened the hearts of the audience, leaving everyone fearful for his fate. So, in today's episode, what will happen next? Will Hùng be able to overcome the critical condition and return to his small family who waits for him every single day? And what about Lythica, the woman who works tirelessly day and night, raising her child while caring for her elderly mother? How will she react when she suddenly receives such devastating news about Hùng? Will her love and determination be enough to face the pain of unexpected loss? Or will this very moment help her discover a new strength to keep standing firm? All of this will gradually be revealed in today's video. I invite everyone to join in, watch until the end so you don't miss any important developments. And as always, don't forget to leave your comments below, share your feelings, and send your best wishes to Lythica's family, to both her and Hùng. After an urgent meeting with Comrade Min and Ms. Mai, Hùng was assigned a special mission, to move into a new area and coordinate in checking smuggling activities. This was not familiar ground, but a border zone full of danger, where for years rumors had spread about the operations of underground gangs. The dirt road leading into this area was narrow and long, with few traces of people passing by. The surface was uneven, covered with damp fallen leaves. On both sides stood rows of thorny bamboo and dense canopies of trees, their branches intertwined so tightly that they blocked out the light, turning the space into a dim, shadowy tunnel. The sound of the wind whistling through the leaves mixed with the constant chirping of insects, forming a chilling melody, like a silent warning. Hùng walked slowly, every movement radiating caution. His hand instinctively reached for the belt where he usually kept his sidearm. His heart pounded, each beat echoing loudly inside his chest. The instinct of a seasoned soldier told him this place was far from safe. Up ahead, at a bend in the road, the darkness grew heavier, completely obscuring his view. As soon as he stepped past, figures suddenly lunged out from the bushes on both sides, like predators pouncing on prey. In an instant, before Hùng could react, a heavy blow crashed onto his shoulder, throwing his body off balance. Before he could recover, a flurry of vicious attacks rained down from every direction, clubs, fists, and brutal kicks striking relentlessly at his body. Hùng struggled to turn and fight back, his eyes flashing with determination. But the smugglers had come prepared. They were many, and they moved with ruthless coordination. From behind, a large man swung an iron rod with full force, aiming straight for Hùng head. The dull, crushing sound echoed in the air. The world before Hùng eyes instantly went dark. Blood gushed from the wound, crimson staining his face, seeping down his collar, and dripping onto the cold, damp earth. He staggered backward a few steps, his vision blurring, his breath ragged and broken. In that moment, all the sounds around him seemed strangled into silence, leaving only the faint thump of his weakening heartbeat, blending with the howling wind through the forest. At last, his sturdy body collapsed onto the deserted dirt road. Mud and blood mingled together, forming a red, patchy smear across the cold ground. Far away, the road stretched on in eerie stillness, with not a single soul in sight. Hùng fate now hung by the thinnest thread, teetering on the fragile boundary between life and death. The deserted dirt road on an early morning was usually peaceful, with only birdsong mingling with the breeze through the bamboo groves. The first rays of sunlight flickered through the leaves, scattering patches of light and shadow across the ground. On that road, a young girl with a petite figure hurried along. On her shoulder hung a bamboo basket full of vegetables and fruits freshly picked from the garden. Her steps were quick, her eyes fixed on the village market where she planned to sell the produce to buy some rice. But suddenly, her hurried footsteps froze. Before her lay a horrifying sight that made her entire body tremble: a man in a white shirt and black trousers, lying motionless by the roadside. His face was pale, his hair soaked with sweat and blood. From the wound on his forehead, fresh blood still trickled, seeping into the cracks of the dry ground and spreading into a haunting red streak. For a moment, she was paralyzed. Her breath caught in her throat. The basket slipped from her shoulder, spilling vegetables across the road. Her hands clenched tightly, then dropped helplessly as her heart pounded violently, ready to burst. Without a second thought, she rushed forward, falling to her knees beside the stranger. Her small hands pressed onto his shoulders, shaking him desperately as her voice cracked with panic. "Sir, can you hear me? Please, open your eyes. Sir." But the man, Hung, remained still. His eyes were shut tight, his breathing faint, so fragile it felt like a thread about to snap. Blood from the wound on his forehead flowed steadily, staining the cold earth and soaking the sleeve of the girl who tried to hold him up. Terror consumed her. She sprang to her feet, legs trembling, yet she forced herself to cry out. At first her voice was shaky, broken, but within moments it became desperate screams that tore through the silence. "Help! Somebody, please! Someone is badly hurt!" Her cries echoed down the empty village road, bouncing off the trees, sounding like fate's own plea for mercy. Luckily, some farmers working in the distant fields heard. They dropped their tools in alarm and rushed toward the sound. When they saw Hung lying unconscious, shock spread across their faces. Without hesitation, they worked together to lift him onto a makeshift cart. The hurried footsteps, ragged breathing, and rattling of the wheels on the rough dirt road filled the air with breathless urgency. With every passing second, Hung's life seemed more fragile, leaving the group trembling with fear. At the hospital, the scene grew even more intense. Doctors and nurses rushed out, wheeling him straight into the emergency room. A quick glance was enough for them to realize the severity. He had lost too much blood, and the head wound was grave. Without immediate surgery, his life would be nearly impossible to save. An older doctor stepped forward, his eyes stern, his voice pressing. "Who is the patient's family? We need a signature immediately to proceed with surgery." The room fell silent. The villagers who had brought him there were only passers-by. None dared take on such a responsibility. The doctor's gaze swept across the crowd and finally landed on the young girl, the one who had first found him and brought him here. She froze, her heart pounding wildly. Her eyes welled up, her hands grew cold. She felt the weight of that question pressing down on her. "Family of the patient," she repeated in her mind, blank with confusion. She wasn't his relative, she didn't even know him. Yet the image of the unconscious man, his face covered in blood, pierced her conscience. She could not walk away. At that moment, she drew a trembling breath and stepped forward. Her voice was shaky but resolute, echoing through the room. I will sign. Please, save him." A nurse quickly handed her the consent form. She took the pen, her hand trembling so violently that the strokes wavered and staggered. But in the end, the signature appeared, the only ticket holding on to the hope of Hung's survival. From that moment on, the frail young woman, who had only intended to go to the market that morning, became his sole support, carrying the responsibility of a true family member. Her eyes followed the closing door of the operating room, her chest heavy with anguish and prayer. All she could do was hope for a miracle, one that might bring the stranger back from the thin line between life and death. Inside the cold operating room, the harsh white lights cast a lifeless glow over Hung's pale face. Lying motionless on the surgical table, his eyes remained tightly shut, his breathing faint, and his head wrapped in blood-soaked bandages. The steady beeping of the monitors, the metallic clatter of surgical tools, and the urgent voices of the doctors filled the air, weaving together a suffocating atmosphere. Every movement in the operation was a fierce race against time, a desperate struggle to wrest life back from the grip of death. Outside in the hallway, dim yellow lights reflected on the cold tiled floor. The waiting seats stood empty, except for the small figure of the young girl, the one who had bravely signed the surgical consent form. She sat hunched forward, fingers interlocked so tightly they had turned white. Her eyes never left the closed door of the operating room, her gaze brimming with worry, half a prayer, half a plea. Time crawled by with merciless slowness. A single minute felt like an eternity. Every echoing footstep in the corridor, every faint sound from behind the closed doors made her heart lurch. She had no connection to him, no reason to be there, yet at this moment her soul seemed suspended with his fate. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, each sound falling like drops of water into her anxious heart. More than once she raised her hand to stifle a sob, but her eyes remained red and wet with tears. In her mind, only one prayer repeated again and again: please live, please don't give up. At last, after what felt like endless hours, the operating room door opened. A shaft of white light spilled into the dim corridor. The lead surgeon stepped out, exhaustion etched in his eyes, but his voice was calm and resolute. The surgery was successful. For now, he is out of danger. In that instant, it was as if a heavy stone had been lifted from the young woman's fragile shoulders. Her hands fell limp, and she let out a long, trembling sigh of relief. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but this time they were not of fear or despair, they were tears of release, of hope restored. She smiled through her tears, pressing her palms together in prayer, whispering softly, "Thank heavens, he has been saved." Outside, the morning sun had risen high, filtering through the hospital windows, illuminating her tear-streaked face now glowing with hope, the face of the young woman who had bravely become a stranger's only support in his most perilous hour. In the quiet recovery room, the air seemed to solidify. For stark white walls stood cold and sterile, the ceiling lit by the harsh glare of neon lights. Only the steady beep, beep, beep of the heart monitor broke the silence, mingling with the sharp scent of disinfectant, making the place feel both orderly and suffocating. On the bed draped in crisp white sheets, Hung lay motionless. His face was pale, his lips cracked and dry, his breathing as fragile as a thread. His eyes stayed tightly shut, his brows faintly furrowed in silent pain after the life-or-death surgery. Though the operation had succeeded, his body was drained, his strength nearly gone, unable to wake on his own. He lay there, as if lost in an endless, heavy slumber. Day after day, a slender figure remained faithfully in that room. It was the young girl, a stranger who had never known Hung before, yet stayed by his side through his most perilous days. From the moment she had tremblingly signed the surgery consent form, she had taken on an unspoken mission: to stand in place of the absent family, to care for him, to be his companion in this battle for life. Each morning, when the first rays of sunlight filtered through the hospital window and lit up the tiny specks of dust in the air, she was already there. Her small hands carefully removed the old bandages and replaced them with clean, new ones. Her fingers trembled, but every movement was slow and meticulous, as though afraid a careless touch might deepen his pain. At mealtimes, she would gently prepare a bowl of thin porridge, its soft aroma mingling with the sterile smell of the room. She sat by his side, feeding him spoon by spoon with quiet patience. When some dribbled from the corner of his mouth, she wiped it away with a clean cloth, her eyes filled with compassion, tending to him as if he were her own kin. On sweltering afternoons, when the sunlight streamed straight through the window and heat pressed into the room, beads of sweat dampened his forehead, matting his hair. The girl quietly took a soft towel, dampened it, and gently wiped each drop away, her motions tender, like a silent comfort. And when the evening breeze grew cool, slipping through the cracks, she pulled the thin blanket up over his chest, afraid even a gust of wind might weaken his frail body further. Many nights, when the room's lamp cast its pale glow across the cold white walls, she did not leave his side. Her eyes were shadowed from sleeplessness, yet they never strayed from his fragile breaths. She listened to every beep of the machine, silently praying the line on the monitor would never fall into stillness. Nurses and doctors who passed by often stared in surprise. At first, they thought she must be his wife or family. But when they learned they were strangers, their astonishment only deepened. One young nurse whispered to a colleague, "She cares for him like a wife, like real family, it's unbelievable." Indeed, the girl's devotion was not grand or showy, but it was fierce and genuine, so much so that it warmed even the cold halls of the hospital. For her, none of this was for recognition or praise. It was simply because her heart would not allow her to turn away from a life hanging on the edge. Deep inside, she knew she could not abandon him, could not let him fight this lonely battle alone. And so, in her every gentle gesture, in her patient gaze, in that cold recovery room, a fragile hope began to bloom. Like a small candle flickering in the darkness, it lit the path for Hung's return to life. One early morning, when the sky was still veiled in mist, the first timid rays of sunlight slipped through the hospital window, spreading a fragile glow over the cold tiled floor. The recovery room, usually so silent, seemed a little warmer, though the heavy scent of antiseptic still hung thick in the air. The steady beep, 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 of the heart monitor ticked away like an invisible clock, measuring each fragile beat of Hung's life. On the bed, his body lay frail and unmoving, just as it had for days. Then, a tiny movement froze the world in place. His fingers trembled faintly, his heavy eyelids quivered, struggling to break free from the endless darkness of coma. The girl, who had kept watch by his side through all those long days, noticed immediately. Her heart clenched, her breath caught, her eyes widened in a mixture of shock and joy. She leaned closer, her voice trembling out like a prayer breaking free. You're awake?" Hung's eyes slowly opened. His gaze was clouded, dazed, as though he were peering through a heavy fog. The blinding white of the ceiling lights, the pungent smell of antiseptic, the distant footsteps in the corridor, all of it flooded in, strange and overwhelming. He blinked repeatedly, searching for something familiar, but only dizziness weighed heavier on him. The girl hurried out to call the doctors. Moments later, the medical team rushed in, their footsteps quick, their faces tense. One doctor bent close, his voice steady but firm. "Can you hear me? Tell us your name, your age." The room fell silent. Hung's eyes shifted weakly, his lips moved, his breathing labored. Then, like a child lost in a crowd, he only shook his head. His eyes were bewildered, full of fear. Who am I? Why am I here?" The words came out hoarse, faint, like echoes from a deep abyss, lonely and despairing. The doctors and nurses exchanged glances, their faces darkened. With just a nod between them, the truth was clear: the head injury had left Hung with amnesia. The news cut into the girl's heart like a cold blade. She froze, her lips pressed tight, her hands clutching her shirt to stifle a sob. All those days, every drop of sweat, every spoon of porridge, every tender touch, had been her hope for this moment, the moment he would open his eyes. Yet now, when he finally awoke, all memories of his family, his wife Hoai, his little boy Tony, were gone, as though they had never existed. His mind was nothing but a vast, empty page. The girl quietly sat back down, gazing at his gaunt face, his lost and unfocused eyes. In that moment, Hùng was like a child lost at a crossroads, bewildered, fragile, with no sense of home. Her chest tightened with aching sorrow. Her small hand trembled, but she reached out, gently clasping his rough palm. The warmth of skin meeting skin felt like an invisible thread binding two strangers. Her voice was soft as a breeze, trembling yet resolute. "It's all right, you don't have to remember now. Just rest. I'll be here with you." The doctor urged her to contact his family quickly, so they could come. But she only lowered her head, her eyes fixed firmly on the man lying weakly in the bed. She knew, Hùng was as helpless as a newborn. If left alone, he might wander forever in the emptiness of forgotten memories. And so, though she was only a passerby with no ties of blood, she chose to stay. Tomorrow, the next day, and for however long it might take, she would remain by his side, caring for him, protecting him as though she were family. She believed that someday his memories might return. And if not, at least he would not face the darkness alone. Outside, the sun had risen high, pouring radiant light through the hospital window, filling the room. In that light, Hung's face, though bewildered, carried the fragile breath of life, while the girl's face shone with gentle determination. It was like a silent omen. Memories may have vanished, but life had been preserved, and from this moment, a new story had just begun. Hùng slowly turned his head, his eyes cloudy and empty as they wandered around the hospital room. The cold white walls, the harsh neon lights, the monotonous beeping of machines, everything seemed unfamiliar, like an entirely new world. He tried to search his mind for a memory, a familiar face, a comforting sound, but all he found was a vast, terrifying emptiness. Beside the bed, the young girl still sat quietly. A stranger who had once only passed by, yet now she had become his only support. Her small hand gently clasped his, her voice soft and soothing, like a tender lullaby. "Don't worry. I'm here with you." Hùng gazed at her in confusion, his eyes blurred like those of a lost child. He didn't know who she was, nor why he was lying there, but the warmth of her touch eased his heart, lessening the weight of fear and uncertainty. Outside, the sun had risen high, its light streaming through the hospital window, casting its glow on two people who were once strangers, now bound together by an inexplicable thread of fate. Yet elsewhere, Hoai still had no idea about Hung's condition. She kept working tirelessly, waiting for the day he would return. But when the truth comes to light, when Hoai learns that the man she loves has lost all his memories, how will her heart endure? Will their love be strong enough to overcome such a cruel trial? All will be revealed in the next episode. Stay tuned to find out where their story will lead, and don't forget to leave your comments, share your thoughts, and send your warmest wishes to Hoai and Hung's family.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì mình tiếp tục đưa đến với mọi người câu chuyện của mẹ đơn thân Lý Hoài Ca và cảnh sát Hùng. Mọi người thân mến, thì hiện tại thì mình vẫn chưa có hoàn thành, mình vẫn đang trong quá trình làm nội dung và đang trong quá trình edit video, thì có thể mất thêm một lúc nữa thì mới có thể hoàn thành video được. Và mình vẫn đang cố gắng để có thể hoàn thành video sớm nhất có thể, để có thể đưa đến cho mọi người những thước phim hay và ý nghĩa nhất. Mình hy vọng rằng mọi người sẽ yêu quý kênh mình hơn, ủng hộ cho kênh mình nhiều hơn nữa. Và nếu như mà mọi người yêu quý kênh mình cũng như là yêu quý các nhân vật thì hãy đăng ký kênh, sau đó bật chuông thông báo lên để không bỏ lỡ bất kỳ video nào mọi người nhé. Và mọi người ơi, hãy để lại bình luận trên video của mình để có thể chúc phúc hay là cầu nguyện cho các nhân vật có thể an toàn và hạnh phúc bên nhau nhé. Và cũng như góp ý cho kênh mình nhiều hơn để kênh mình có thể rút kinh nghiệm và đưa ra những video hay hơn cho những lần sau. Tạm biệt.